Welcome into the Commanders Report. I am your host, Jack Sperry. On today's show, I'll be sharing my updated list of free agency targets for the Washington Commanders now that it's June 1st, which means some of these teams are starting to cut more players. The trade market starts to heat up again. I want to give you guys my updated list here. I got 15 names to break down, so quite a list here to break down. But first, make sure you like today's video if you want the Washington Commanders to make another signing during NFL free agency here before the start of training camp, okay? So go ahead, do me a favor. If you want a free and easy way to help out the channel here, tell the YouTube algorithm to push this video out to more Commanders fans, click that thumbs up icon right now. So before I get into my list of free agency targets here, we do have some news that relates to the starting left guard position. Head Coach Ron Rivera had his press conference earlier today, and he has revealed his plan for what the Commanders are going to be moving forward with at the left guard position after cutting Andrew Norwell, who, of course, was the starter for the Commanders last season. So he said Sadiq Charles is going to be the presumptive starter moving forward here with Chris Paul right behind him there at left guard. Nick Gates and Ricky Stromberg are still expected to take reps at center. And Sadiq Charles, someone that was drafted back in 2020 out of LSU, did not exactly play well last season. Look at that pass block grade right there. 29.7 according to Pro Football Focus from last year. I didn't even know the rankings could go that low if I'm being completely honest with you. Overall, he was a 43.6, which was kind of buoyed by a 51.3 run block grade, but overall, he was one of the lowest graded offensive guards in the National Football League last year with 290 snaps at right guard. He's going to be moving over to the left side now, apparently, and then if he's not working out, Chris Paul is right behind him here. He only had one game last year, didn't have a whole lot of reps, but he's going to be competing with Charles for that starting left guard position if the Washington Commanders don't make a move in NFL free agency or if they don't trade for another offensive guard. Personally, I think you need to add another spot here at left guard before the start of training camp. I mean, having somebody that played that poorly last season slated as your presumptive starter and at such a key spot in the interior of the offensive line just can't happen if you're Ron Rivera. You're going into a prove-it kind of year with new ownership coming in. You have to get this team to the playoffs. You need a solid offensive line, and you need to get, I think, some more competition there on the interior. Right now, the current cap space for the Washington Commanders sits at just above $4 million. So there's a little bit of space there, but you're going to have to make some maneuvers here if you're going to sign a bigger name and make a splash. So let me know in the comment section right now, should the Washington Commanders sign another offensive guard? Give me a yes or give me a no in the comment section. And this is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So whenever you get an ad break here and YouTube throws you guys an ad, just go ahead, take advantage of that time by answering today's question with a yes or a no. So now I'm going to be breaking down the best available offensive guards that are still available on the NFL free agency market. There's still some guys that are still available right now that have lots of experience in the National Football League and could be a nice another piece to add to this offensive line before the start of training camp and provide another competitor along the interior of the offensive line. So Dalton Risner, Justin Pugh, Michael Schofield, we'll be talking about those guys more in depth here in just a second. But Ben Jones, normally a center, but could move over to guard, is a pretty interesting proposition there as well, right? Roger Saffold, another interesting prospect there, a player, I should say. Gabe Jackson, AJ Cann, and Trai Turner. Of course, you cut Trai Turner earlier this offseason, but hey, I would take him over Sadiq Charles given the way that these two men played last season. Turner was the better player. You can get him for a lower contract. So let's talk a little bit about Dalton Risner, who in my opinion is the best interior offensive lineman still on the market. Last year, he did allow 3 sacks in 15 games with the Denver Broncos, but he has a ton of experience playing in the National Football League, and his pass blocking grade is really nice. I really want some nice pass protection for Sam Howell here going into his sophomore season. Then Justin Pugh, only 5 games played last season, but man, he's somebody that's played a lot of football in the National Football League and somebody that can bring a lot of experience to this offensive line. I think he'd be a decent piece as well. And then Michael Schofield played in 11 games last year and allowed 1 sack. He's another pretty darn good option that, like these other guys, they've played a lot of football. They're veterans. They know what they're doing there in the interior of the offensive line. And I think that that, you put Schofield or Risner or any of these other guys next to Sadiq Charles and really force Sadiq to really earn that position. I think that can only be good for Charles and only good for these free agents that could be signed. Now let's have a word from our sponsor here at BetUS. Go to chatsports.com/bet to get a 125% deposit bonus when you use promo code CHAT125. What that means, guys, a 125% deposit bonus is like if you put in $100, they're going to give you $125 additional dollars to use on your bets. The NBA Finals are here. It's the Heat versus the Nuggets, Joker versus Jimmy Butler. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. I'm going to be placing my bets. I hope you all are going to be doing that as well here. Go to chatsports.com/bet and use promo code CHAT125 to get that 125% deposit bonus. So another position to consider here, at least in my opinion, is inside linebacker for the Washington Commanders because it's a little light on what I would call starter-capable talents. You got Jamin Davis, who I really like. You got Cody Barton. You brought him in NFL free agency. He's all right. This is probably the weakest portion of the Commanders' defense heading into 2023. You got David Mayo, who's an okay player. But if you want to add another veteran, there's still some pretty nice names floating around in NFL free agency that you can consider here. Anthony Barr, somebody that's kind of a versatile piece. He can even play a little bit of edge if you really need him to. Somebody that's a really good blitzer. Rashaan Evans, another great athlete that's still relatively young, can come in, do a really nice job for you if you're Ron Rivera, if you're in a pinch. And then Kwon Alexander, somebody that's actually pretty darn good in coverage, played in some of these wide 9 systems that you're starting to see pop up in the NFL, like in San Francisco. Really had a great season there in the Bay Area, and he could definitely come in to Ron Rivera's system here and be a nice coverage linebacker. And then Zach Cunningham, someone that's played a ton of football in the National Football League, could be a good option. Anthony Barr is somebody that I would maybe not be my first option. He is getting older. He's had some really low production numbers here over the last couple of years. Not my number one option if I'm the Washington Commanders. I would look towards someone more young, like a Rashaan Evans, somebody that's, he has experience. He's been a starter in this league before, but he's somebody that's not quite as old as Barr is. He's somebody that's still a really good athlete. He went in the first round for a reason because he's massively talented in the physical gifts department. He can still bring a lot to the table on an NFL team, at least in my opinion. Kwon Alexander, a little bit banged up. There was a rumor that he might sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers, even went on a visit to Pittsburgh, but that didn't work out. There's some rumors that he's got some medical issues going on right now. But hey, if he clears a physical for the Washington Commanders, they need guys that can cover in zone coverage in the middle of the defense, okay, plain and simply. And Kwon Alexander is somebody that's done that time and time again throughout his career. He actually had a pretty decent season last year for the New York Jets. I'd be interested to see what he does in a Commander's uniform. Then Zach Cunningham, 24 tackles last year, has played a lot of football in this league. He's got a bunch of experience. If you want to bring him in as a backup, I wouldn't mind that whatsoever. I'd probably go with Cody Barton and Jamin Davis over him, however. So let me know in the comment section, which of these inside linebackers would you like to add to this roster? If you'd like to add Anthony Barr, go AB. If you want Kwon Alexander, type KA. Rashaan Evans, RE, or if it's Zach Cunningham, type ZC down there in the comments. So before I go here, I've got a couple more names to give you and some wild cards and some kind of weird positions that maybe they don't need another player, but they're a good player, and I want to maybe consider that. Number 1, Bryce Callahan, slot cornerback. Now, he brought in Jartavius Martin here from Illinois in round 2, and he's the presumptive starter at the nickel cornerback position. But Martin can also play free safety. So if you want to move Martin to free safety alongside Cameron Curl there in the box, you can have somebody like a Bryce Callahan in the slot, somebody that's played a ton of football in the slot. He's a solid veteran that's still a really good player, in my opinion. I'm surprised he hasn't signed anywhere yet, to be honest with you. I think he's that good. But right now, I would probably project Kendall Fuller and Emmanuel Forbes to be the starters. Emmanuel Forbes has been lighting it up at OTA practices so far this year. Jartavius Martin is impressing as well at both nickel and safety. So it's going to be interesting to see what Ron Rivera wants to do with Martin moving on in the future. He could move him to free safety, replace Derek Forrest if they want to bring in a guy like Bryce Callahan to fill that spot in the slot. So moving on here, There's another position that I want you guys to hear me out about, and that's the wide receiver position. Now, we all know that this position is really, really solidified when it comes to the Washington Commanders right now, but they could really use another red zone threat, a bigger body. If you take a look at the size of the Commanders wide receivers, they got a ton of talent, but not a ton of size. The biggest starting wide receiver on this team is Terry McLaurin, and he is 6 foot tall, man. That's not tiny, but that's not big either. None of these guys are really those big body red zone threat targets that most teams have at least one of those guys to get those jump balls there in the end zone. And there's still a couple guys that have done it in this league before and are still pretty darn good players. I'm talking about Julio Jones and Kenny Golladay. Now, Julio's not going to be the Julio of 5 years ago, okay? That's just not going to happen. If you sign Julio Jones, he's going to be your 4th wide receiver to come in those red zone packages for those fades in the red zone. And I think that he can still do that really well. He's not as fast as he once was. He doesn't have the same burst, but man, he's still got the size. He still has pretty darn good body control and hands. I think that'd be a great role for Julio if he's willing to take that in a lower contract. And Kenny Golladay did not have a good tenure with the New York Giants. He was just putrid. There's no other way to put it, but he's a big wide receiver. He's had success in this league before when he was with the Detroit Lions, and he's somebody that maybe can have a career revival here in the nation's capital. So should the Washington Commanders add a big body wide receiver? Do you agree with me? Let me know. If you would sign a big body receiver, type S down there in the comments, or if you would pass on a big wide receiver, maybe go get a different position, type P down there in the comment section. All right, now that's going to be it for today's show. Really do appreciate everybody that made it to the end of the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so you always get access and notified about our free videos here on YouTube. All right, guys, that's going to be it for me today. I'll see you guys later, and as always, hail to the Commanders.